Welcome on in, guys. This is Three Bold Takes. Chase, Quinn, and Freddie right here, right at you. We're going to be talking about the 2024 season and what can make for a successful season for these differing teams. And today, on this video, we're going to be talking about Florida State. Freddie, what do you think about Florida State coming up in 2024?
Yeah, so obviously Florida State is a team that I was high on coming into last year. Had them making the playoffs, and unfortunately they did not make the playoffs. As we all know, undefeated regular season, suffered some injuries down the stretch that in turn hurt their chances to make the playoffs. Ended up slotting in at the 5 spot, playing Georgia in the Capital One Bowl, and sustained the worst loss in bowl history. That you can't make excuses for that. I'm not making that up. That's not an opinion. That's a fact. 63-3 is the worst loss in bowl history. Now that that's out of the way, let's turn to 2024. Now, you can't really improve on what they did last year, going 13-1, right? Like that's, and well, okay, we'll just screw the bowl game there. 12-0 in the regular season. You can't improve on that. ACC champs. You can. That's impossible to improve on, especially since you didn't get a chance to play in the playoffs for a national championship. So, with that in mind, heading into 2024, if you kind of take a look at their schedule a little bit, obviously it's the ACC, right? But you've got Clemson, who Quinn, you may be high on going into next year compared to the last couple of years. You have Miami, which I know you're probably high on as well, Quinn. And then you have Notre Dame as well at Notre Dame. So, you got 3 very tough matchups there throughout the season. But if you look at the other games, you play Georgia Tech and Ireland, your non-con games aren't that impressive, which is a good thing for Florida State. So when I look at 2024, I'm not as high on Florida State in 2024 that I was last year. I think for a successful season, a bounce-back year, you'd expect they'd want to come out for some revenge. They'd want to shock the world, go 12-0 again. I don't see that happening. I've got a 10-2 probably regular season. And honestly, 10-2, and let's just say that you make the ACC championship game and win, you're in the playoffs. Obviously, you got a first round bye. So I think for Florida State, you got to make the playoffs this year to be successful. Which in a 12-team playoff isn't that crazy to think about, especially what you did last year. Now you did have some transfers, you did have some go to the draft, but you were active in the transfer portal as well for players coming in. So you've got pieces down there. You've got the fuel to have a great season next year. You've got a good head coach, right? Like, these are things that are key in order to have a quote-unquote successful season to make the playoffs. And I think they do it next year. And I think that's the bar that I'm going to set for Florida State next year, is to make the playoffs and actually win a first-round game in the playoffs. So that, to me, is successful. Anything less than that is unsuccessful to me, and a failure of a year if I'm a Florida State fan. Quinn?
Yeah, I'm not too far off with you. I'll just come straight out. I think a successful year for Florida State is getting to the quarterfinal round. So that would be either you win the ACC and you get a first round bye, or you win that opening game and then get into that next round. When you look at their schedule, I think you're allowed to lose one conference game, whether that is the game with Clemson or the road matchup with Miami. You look at non-con, and I think they actually have a pretty decent non-con schedule. You have a what's going to be a tough game at Notre Dame. And then I think Florida will be improved this year. I think Florida's looking as like a middle-of-the-road SEC team for 2024. So you have a respectable non-con schedule if you're Florida State. I think you might slip up in one of those games. I think you're allowed to lose a game in the regular season in ACC play. As long as you get to the ACC championship game, I think you can put yourself. I think you must be in the. Let me rephrase: must be in the ACC championship game, as well as getting to the next round if you're Florida State. So it's really how do you handle those big matchups with Clemson, Miami, Notre Dame. I think they do all right, but I'd say successful year, quarterfinals, and at least be in the ACC championship.
And I want to mention this about the non-con. I don't necessarily consider Notre Dame a non-con game because they do have a scheduling agreement with the ACC. So they play a heavy ACC schedule. So I guess when I'm saying that, I'm looking over the fact that they do play Notre Dame, which is a tough game, especially on the road.
Yeah.
Chase?
This is kind of like the moment where Michael Scott gives that monkey to Oscar, and Oscar says thank you in the office. Like, I don't know how, because y'all kind of have higher expectations than, and I don't know if this is just me being pitiful for Florida State, but I kind of got them. If they can get to 8 wins, I'm going to be excited for them. I think that's a huge success. 60% of their roster is going to be underclassmen, freshmen, sophomores. It's going to be a young team. They lost 17 guys to the draft. Another 20 transferred out. The quarterback problem looked horrible last year. You bring in DJU. How well does he look in this offense? It's kind of a different offense than the Oregon State one. Oregon State was really ground and pound and let DJU kind of work out of the play action. So it's going to be a lot different this year. And I don't think they have a super tough schedule, but I think there's going to be a lot of close games in this one. Clemson's going to be a close game. Notre Dame's going to be a close game. I have a feeling Florida's going to be a close game. And with a younger team, kind of like the Colorado team that we talked about last year, how does it shake out for them? If they get into this close game, since they're younger, do they lose by 3 points? They lose by 7, which last year with a lot of seniors and a lot of transferred in guys, they could win those games. So for me, I think the success is 8 to 9 wins and potentially getting in on the back end of that 12-team playoff. I think you knocked it out of the park is making it back to the ACC championship. I think Clemson has a good shot at that this year. I think Miami has a good shot at that this year. NC State even. There's a lot of good teams in the ACC, and Florida State just happened to have a wonderful season last year and got all the way there. Louisville's another team that could potentially put themselves back in the ACC championship conversation. So for me, I think an 8-win season with the amount of people you lost and all that, and I know Norvell does a wonderful job in the transfer portal. He brings a lot of guys in that really creates a roster that allows them to compete every year. Look at last year heading in from the preseason, you bring in Keon Coleman and all those guys, and everybody's like, oh, well, this is going to be a good team, not a team that's going to win 12 games and go to the ACC championship, So Norvell does a wonderful job. Let's not get that twisted. He's a very good coach and does really good with transfer prospects. So I'm excited to see what he does there. But I am a little wary with, you go from a heavy senior fifth-year portfolio to 60% of my roster is underclassmen, and we're going to try and work this out. So there's going to probably be a little bit of a lull, I think, just like, hey, ACC championship vibes, there's going to be a little bit of a lull, and I think they'll drop down just a little bit. So I love that 8 to 9 range for me, top 12 potentially at the back end. So anything else, fellas?
I think that pretty much rounds out Florida State for me.
There we go, guys. We just talked about Florida State and how their successful season could be in 2024. Guys, for Three Bold Takes is Quinn, Chase, and Freddie. We'd love having you. Please listen to us. Please like, comment, and subscribe as much as you can. Share to your friends and family. And for Three Bold Takes, we're out.